registered provisional practicing psychologist, which essentially means that I am working and practicing but under the supervision of my primary supervisor, and I've completed all the education requirements to be a practicing psychologist, just finishing that last year of my internship program now. I'm from Helping Minds Online, and basically my channel is about providing social commentary, psychoanalysis on celebrity phenomena and on what's sort of happening in the world right now. So if that is something that is interesting to you, please subscribe, because it is a unique spin. I offer a psychoanalysis on celebrities and celebrity topics. Psychology is very interesting, so it also will give you some insight on how you think, and how I always provide tips on how to apply this knowledge that I have to better your own life. So if you want to be entertained as well as receive psychological help and tips, please subscribe. Note, this does not replace psychology sessions with your therapist though. Nice try. Anyway, so today what we're going to talk about is the Will Smith debacle that literally just happened yesterday. It happened almost to the hour yesterday and was broadcast live in Australia, so we saw the whole thing unedited. And we're going to unpack what happened. We're going to talk about a psychoanalysis on Will Smith, and I will explain to you how I would treat him if he was coming to me as a client following the incident that occurred yesterday, how I would treat him, what I would be screening for, and I'll also give some insight into why he might have done what he did. I always need to start my videos by stating my biases, because it's very important as a practitioner to, and just as a human being in general, to understand that there are always different perspectives. So I will see an event and I will interpret it, bringing into the interpretation my world, my schemas, my ideas, my attitudes, my beliefs, and somebody else could see the exact same phenomena and have a completely different experience and interpretation. So the biases that I bring into this video skew my perspective, and I just want to be an effective practitioner and let you know what they are prior to commencing. Now, in this case, I absolutely am appalled by what happened. I am so mortified. It was so upsetting for me. I wanted Will Smith to win so bad, and this has been something that I have been following and something that has been really dear to my heart for quite some time. So when Will Smith wasn't nominated for Best Actor for Concussion, I saw that as such an injustice. I really believe that the problem with awards and with minorities getting so few of them, the problem is systemic. Basically, we have nearly all the movies, all the great movies are being produced with one person in the lead role, and that is a white man. Now, we have people like Reese Witherspoon that are actively trying to push the female narrative. Like Ocean's 8, I think it was, did so well, and that was with an all-female cast, just showing that if it's the Brad Pitt and the George Clooney's, or the Kate Blanchetts and the Sandra Bullocks, they're still box office successes. So at the moment, we mostly still see the white man who is the lead role of the great Oscar-worthy films. And that's why the problem is systemic, because it's so hard for any minority to get nominated and receive a Best Picture, because there's just so few of those types of movies being made that puts them in the lead role. So when Leonardo DiCaprio didn't win year after year after year, I didn't really feel sorry for him. I'm sorry, but every single movie that Leonardo DiCaprio was in is an Oscar-worthy movie. It's got the best directors, it's got the best writers, the best actors, supporting actors. Everything is built so that he gets that nomination. And yeah, that's probably why he didn't win, because of course he's going to be nominated for a film like that. Will Smith, however, has actively stated about how the Oscars are, he's boycotted them before because he just thinks that it's not fair to minorities. And he actually had to go and make a movie in order to be a contender for the best lead actor, which, annoying. It's just not right, but hopefully things will change. But for me, like, that movie speaks, I love Venus and Serena Williams. It speaks such volumes to me. And I watched that movie, I cried nearly every moment of it because it was so moving. And I waited for the press release to see that he was nominated, and I was so happy when he did. And I waited eagerly, hoping he would just for once make history and be the 5th black man in history to win Best Lead Actor. Like, that's just not right. Like, there hasn't been a black man to win in like nearly 20 years since Denzel Washington. And as for black women, there is one woman in history to win the Best Actress, and that's Halle Berry 20 years ago. Also, it's not just the Oscars, it goes out to the Grammys too. Like, we all know that Beyonce should have won Best Album of the Year, and even Adele felt shameful to take that award that night and dedicated it to Beyonce, who was the rightful winner. So the problem is both systemic, and it also has, I think, some prejudices and stereotypes that are deeply ingrained within the academies. Sorry to say, no disrespect to the Academy. I think that we all have stereotypes, and that unfortunately shapes how we're going to vote for these things too. So when Will Smith won, it was going to be a huge movement towards like more minorities being able to win these awards. But what's actually happened now is he's taken away from the night for everyone else who was there. I don't even know who won Best Actress. Nobody cares right now. All we're talking about is Will Smith. The whole thing is about him. It's not about Venus and Serena. It's not about King Richard. It's just about an act of violence now. And it's something that has set back social progression quite a bit as well. Possibly. Everything I say is just my thoughts. The other thing that makes me biased in this situation is I really do not like when bigger men attack smaller men, particularly in a cowardly way, which is what I honestly believe had happened. Chris Rock absolutely would not have been expecting it. And I do not think that had it have been The Rock there instead of Chris Rock, I don't think Will Smith would have gone up and slapped him. So that's another thing that's really annoying. Like, had it have been The Rock and not Chris Rock, I just don't think this would have happened. And lastly, I get really upset when people are traumatized or abused or assaulted in their line of work, in their profession, doing what they need to do to make a living, that we all have the right to do. So Chris Rock was just doing his job. He's a comedian. We expect this at award shows. Like, up until this point, the most visually insulting thing that we've ever had to deal with at the Oscars is seeing James Franco wearing a dress. Like, it's not funny. If a man wants to wear a dress, let him. And it's like, those jokes are really typical of the Oscars. They're tired jokes that nobody really finds funny anymore. But we definitely are not expecting something like this to occur. So that's another reason why I think that we are so upset by it, because many of us, like for many of us who come from privilege, who come from homes that didn't involve violence, that, like, for example, that come from Australia, this is actually the first time we've seen violence, like real violence. We see it in the movies, yes. We see it when we watch MMA, yes. But we make that decision. We're prepared for that. This was totally unexpected, and it was real. It was real human emotions. We didn't have a choice. It was broadcast live, and it's so out of what we were expecting to see. So that is one of the reasons why we're so upset, because we weren't expecting. This is like, for many of us, this is the first time we've actually seen real violence. The psychological response of seeing a violent attack is very ingrained. It's very primitive. It's biologically meant to protect us, because we're instantly thinking, oh my God, like, is he going to come over and slap me next? And I'd say a lot of the people there at the Oscars would have been thinking the same thing. We're like wondering, oh no, is this entourage going to step in? Is this going to escalate? The response of the crowd was simply to sit there and let the show go on, which so many people are deeply outraged and ashamed about. It's like the Hollywood elite can get away with anything. But why did that happen? Like, what's the psychological explanation as to why no one did anything? It's called the bystander effect, and it's basically psychological phenomena that we just, like, we can explain, but we just, like, it's so shocking. It's not the first time things like this happen. Where there was an incident where a woman was raped by a man in the stairwell of a building, and the residents just walked past and went into their homes. How could that have happened? What happens is one person, it just takes that one person to do nothing, and then we all sort of do the same thing. So that's essentially why that occurs. Like, we see, oh, okay, Bradley Cooper is consoling him, they're not doing anything, so I'll just sit here and do nothing as well. So you're not going to go against the grain of society. If you're ever in that situation, what we recommend that you do is, if you're being attacked and people are watching, it happens far too frequently, is you basically point to someone. So he could have said, Chris Rock could have been like, hey, Nicole Kidman, come help me. Or, hey, Denzel Washington, come and help me. That's the sort of things that you need to do in those situations. You need to point to somebody in the crowd and say, hey, you in the red shirt, come and help me now. So you've personally identified them, it gives them responsibility, and it increases the likelihood that they will come and render assistance. And then also, the Academy didn't really do anything. So a lot of us, like, I thought, oh, they were probably just like, oh my God, we can't shoo him out, he's about to win Best Actor. But in actuality, one thing that La La Land Moonshine debacle taught us is that there are only two people in that entire room and involved in that entire ceremony who actually know who's about to win prior to that person winning. So everyone else in the Academy didn't know that Will Smith was going to win, but they still stood by, again, like the rest of the audience, because of the bystander effect, and did nothing. And it's only now that there is such a huge backlash from society that they're formally investigating it. Should Will Smith be stripped of his award? No, I don't think so. Particularly as the likes of Harvey Weinstein, whatever his stupid name is, and Roman Polanski, I think his name is, they still have their awards. So Will Smith, based on that fact, Will Smith shouldn't be stripped of his award, in my opinion. I think that would be an injustice. But Will Smith is a role model, and unfortunately those actions make it okay for a lot of young children, even a lot of men in domestic violence situations, like, to go, don't like what you're saying. Like, it's not okay to just be like, I don't like what you're saying, so I'm going to physically assault you. We as society have worked so hard to make violence and all forms of violence is completely unacceptable. Like, long gone are those days where the big hero in the group going and knocking someone out is like, wow, he's amazing. It's like, oh my God, you could have killed him, you jerk. Like, it's not okay anymore. It's not something that we support and that we find acceptable. And also, like, the unfortunate thing is this was broadcast live, so many of us didn't have a choice in seeing that. We don't expect to see that as well when we watch the Oscars. Like, again, like, the biggest drama of the night might be, I was going to say a bad joke, which is exactly what Chris Rock did, but it's just, we don't expect that from our A-listers, from our elites, and at such a historical and pinnacle event. Like, the Oscars is the awards night. Everything builds up to the Oscars. And the fact is that we were watching that, and it can invoke a lot of trauma responses as well for people who have been hit, for women who have been hit by their partners. A lot of children might think it's okay to just go and slap somebody now because Will Smith is a role model. That Will Smith has affected our ability to enjoy an award show and enjoy jokes, because there's a sense of weariness now. It's like, oh my God, is someone going to come out of the crowd and hit somebody now? So many men side with him, absolutely. As I said earlier, we all have our lens and our perspective in life that allows us to interpret events and phenomena and process it and respond accordingly. And many men will think that, like, that was justified. A lot of men and women will have the bullying fantasy where they sort of imagine that time when that person bullied you and you getting up there in a suit on stage slapping him and then coming back and sitting down. But the reality is Chris Rock is not a bully. Sure, his his joke was distasteful. It was a bad joke, but it's not the same as that high school bully that relentlessly tormented you. And also, gentlemen, I have to say, but we can protect ourselves. You don't need to step in and protect us. Jada was not being physically assaulted. Sure, if Chris Rock had have gotten down there and was like, I don't know, like started madly pashing her or groping her, everyone get in there, get him off her, stop this. But it's a joke. At an awards night, it's expected behaviour, it's expected norms of that particular event. That awards night is like a work event night. It's much more glorified, it's much more prestigious, but it's similar to us going to a work event giving awards out, because they are actually, all those celebrities are colleagues, they all work together, that's their industry. Now, as workers, if we went to a work night and there was a couple there and the MC, who was a colleague who had the courage to go up there and MC, it's not easy. Somebody or your partner went up and slapped them, it would ruin the night for everybody. And it would be really inappropriate behaviour. And I think I speak for a lot of women that are secretly sitting there thinking, please don't do anything like that to me at an award show, an embarrassment like that. I can handle myself. Like, if someone wants to make a silly joke about me, I'll speak to them after. There's no need for you to do something like that and ruin the night for everyone. So if you are sort of thinking along the lines of like that, the bully fantasy of Will Smith's actions were justified because a part of you wishes that they had have gone and slapped the bully, know that Chris Rock does not meet the characteristics of a bully. And also know that a better exercise, instead of having that violent revenge fantasy, would be to work on your self-esteem, work on your self-worth, so that then you know that you're just worth so much better than anything that any of those people have to say. I need to state as well, I've never met Will Smith, he's not a client of mine, nor is Chris Rock, and again, due to confidentiality, I would not be sharing any information here if they were. But if Will Smith was going to walk in tomorrow and say, Jazmin, I need some help, let's unpack what happened. Firstly, some of the things that you sort of look for in that situation, the likelihood of him being an aggressive client is actually, there is a risk factor there. So we just have the training to know we've got to look for the benchmark of normal, stabilized, calm behavior and look for elevations beyond that. And when that occurs, we obviously code grey, get security in. But with Will Smith, unfortunately, there was no signs of elevation. It was literally a snap and he was gone, and the aggressive behavior ensued. So in that situation, I would need to do things like position myself near a door, near an exit, to ensure my own safety. And that's the reality of it. When you do things like that, the likelihood of someone doing it again is actually quite high. Now, if they act aggressively within session or within the workplace, we would need to debrief everyone that we've involved in that scene and in that scenario, because it's very traumatic to see violence. We have a deep primitive response as to how we cope with something like that, because we need to protect our well-being. So I would be thinking the same thing should have occurred last night, making sure that everyone is okay that was involved in that, because again, it is quite traumatic. I think that a lot of the people at the academy last night, that was probably the first time in their lives that many of them have actually witnessed real physical man-on-man violence. Then I would sort of work with Will Smith and say, okay, I guess I am aware of this because it's public knowledge, but Will Smith comes from a violent home, extreme domestic violence that he suffered through as a child, which actually increases the likelihood of him engaging in violence himself as an adult, statistically. So I would factor that in. But I would also consider, though, that this is an isolated incident. This is, as far as we all know, this is the first time Will Smith has shown signs of violence or aggression. Ordinarily, he's actually incredibly exuberant, confident. Like, he brings the energy. Like, when you saw him in the Graham Norton show, he lifted that whole room. Like, he's larger than life. when people do act out of the norm and out of any behavior that's incongruous with societal norms, which is what happened yesterday, going and physically assaulting someone. So in context of that behavior, we would need to assess him psychologically, and that confidence that he exudes would also could be a symptom of grandiosity. Then there's also inability to control one's impulses. Like, many of us have had somebody say something that we didn't like, and maybe we've even seen the image of us going up and punching them or slapping them, but so very few of us actually act on it. We just know that you can't. You simply cannot. If we had people in life that just thought it was acceptable to go and slap everyone who we disagreed with, like, what if it's your boss? Like, Jazmin, I want you to work from 9 till 6 today. I don't want to do that. Slap. Like, it's preposterous. Like, we cannot function as a society if that's the way that we're all going to act, which is why there are laws in place, which is why this is classified as physical assault, which is subject to criminal proceedings. So keeping in mind, we've got grandiosity, lack of impulse control, extreme agitation as well. I would absolutely be screening for other symptoms of bipolar disorder. Keeping in mind, though, that this is an isolated incident, I would always factor that in. And I also really want to be clear that we don't want to be frowning upon or reprimanding people that are exuberant, that have incredible confidence, because that's beautiful. That's a really beautiful thing. When you engage in behavior that is irregular, then that's when we sort of need to do these assessments. The other thing that I would state here too is that I feel like Will Smith was under incredible pressure and under incredible stress. Now, a lot of us have had experiences of, even myself actually, one time I was just under so much stress and under so much pressure, and I have my little baby, my little chihuahua that you guys see occasionally. He comes and annoys me during these videos, and I've only smacked that little dog once. It wasn't hard, but I smacked him on the bum because he ran off down the street and eloped with this other dog, and like, they could have got run over. It was awful trying to find him. And then once I finally got him back, he started to be naughty all over again, and I just couldn't take it, and I smacked him. I've never done it again since, and I'm not a violent sort of person, but what my point is that we all have breaking points, and perhaps like the pressure for Will Smith to make history, to be like, how hard it is for a black man to get Best Actor, which he wants. He like was nominated for Ali G. No, sorry, not Ali G. That Ali movie. You know the one. I think it's actually just Ali. For Muhammad Ali, I know who he is. And then he should have been nominated for Concussion. That was a brilliant movie. It really was. Yeah, so he had to go and produce a movie in order to be contender. And he had the weight of Serena and Venus and everyone's expectations on him. I just think that he's under a lot of stress and pressure, and things aren't quite right for him at the moment. He's heavily in fight or flight in that state of mind, which is why when someone insults you or insults like the extension of you that is your wife or your husband, you fight or you go into another fight or flight response. And in this case, he fought. Now, he needs to get back to a calmer mind state. And so perhaps he needs to realize that all this is just a bit too much. He's at a point in his life where the stress, he's not handling it the way he used to be able to. Maybe he's not as confident and happy-go-lucky as he once was too. So he needs to recognize that within himself. And also, like, he possibly as well, because he's openly stated that he wishes that he could have done something to help his mum when she was being attacked by his father. And perhaps like that shame that he may carry, that he shouldn't carry, by the way, like when he felt the need to protect his mum and he felt helpless and that he couldn't, and because he hasn't unpacked that with a therapist, he still has maladaptive beliefs around that those events. And so when it was replicated in front of him, where someone that he loves is being disrespected by another man, he's like, well, I'm not a little boy anymore. I can go up there and I can stop him. And so that's like, he's like sort of acting on all of that past trauma. So that's like, basically that's all a lot of us are in life, is just reacting to the traumas that we have within, which is why it is so important to work with a psychologist, to work with a professional, to unpack that trauma so that things like this don't happen, so that he could have been in a calmer state, so that he wouldn't have been in fight or flight and reacted the way that he did. Because again, like, we just see a huge inability for him to regulate his emotions, and that often occurs when people are outside of their comfort zone, outside of their routine, and when they are under immense amounts of stress. So I would also be factoring that in as well. So again, the importance here is to know, like, when are we working too hard? When are we not ourselves? When are we under too much stress? When do we need time out from everybody? When do we need to engage in self-care? Because the problem though with being a celebrity is that we all adore you and you're worth millions and now billions. But unfortunately, you guys, like, you're still human, and you're still subject to the same range of emotions that we all experience, but your pressures are that much greater, and you have unfortunately got the eyes of the world watching you. Many of us have done things that we've regretted. Many of us have stepped out of line, but we don't have the world watching. Now, if somebody had seen me smack my little dog, and then there could have been headlines saying, psychologist and animal cruelty sort of thing, like, that's totally taken out of context. Like, Freddie's a chihuahua and he didn't even yelp or even notice that I smacked him, but it still, for me, was so, if I really had trouble to forgive myself that I did that. But I just sort of like realized, you know, like, these are the things that were going on for me that day. It was all too much, so don't do that again, because look at what can happen. It's all like, we all need to be mindful of our environments. We need to cultivate environments and work situations that are conducive to our, like, proper healthy well-being and progression. We don't want to be stressed. We don't want to be like agitated and like attacking people. Now, how could he have handled that situation? Well, he could have said, my wife, a black woman, represents one of the most oppressed minorities in society today. I would not be standing here had it not been for the three most powerful women in this room, my wife, Jada, and Venus and Serena Williams. And that would have been so much more classy. The shame would be then with Chris Rock. The duty would then be with other comedians to, you know, step up your game, do your research. Don't be making jokes about people if it's actually because they're suffering from a condition. But more importantly, something like that would have made positive change, and it would have honored these women instead of victimizing them. So I don't know if you guys agree with me. I hope you do. Actually, I don't. I'm really open to your point of view on this. Like, it's what shapes us into better individuals, as being open to other people's perspectives and viewpoints. So please feel free to share and comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.